how to grapple with the gospel reading today. For a preacher, especially a new preacher like me, it's a curly one. Starting with its structure, the three separate parts, the apocalyptic snippet, the fig tree metaphor, and the parable of the man leaving his slaves in charge of his home while he goes on a journey. What's the link between them? Where's the theme? How does this gospel connect to us and our lives in Aotearoa in 2023? How do they relate to the season of Advent we're beginning today? I'm going to focus on one strand from this gospel reading, and that's hope. Advent's about hope. There's the hope symbolised by the birth of Jesus in the stable, the hope of the Word who became flesh. There's the hope that the fullness of God will ultimately be realised in the world. And there's the hope created in the fact that God is already here, among us, working here in the world now. Advent challenges us to see ourselves as already manifesting the reality of the love God offers us here and now, to see that God's kingdom is already here, that although we're waiting for it to be made real, it's already real. We're challenged to live in that paradox of being imperfect and yet perfectly loved, living in an imperfect world, holding the pain and sorrow in our world, the Ukraine, the war between Palestine and Israel, poverty, racism, but also the world's immense joys. The message of this reading is to look out beyond the near horizon to see the hopefulness of the biggest picture of the story we are participants in. The call is to see that that story is laced through with God's love, to know in our cause the truth of Jesus' statement that though heaven and earth will pass away, his words will not. And knowing that, to stand strong in hope. Advent invites us to embrace that hope, to trust in God's faithfulness and live into the fullness of God's presence in our lives and in the world here and now, and also to live into the anticipation of the full realization of his love in the future. So you might ask, what's that apocalyptic section at the beginning of the reading all about, with its description of the darkening of the sun and the stars falling from heaven? What does that have to do with hope? You might struggle with that, like me, even though I've just done an essay about apocalyptic literature. But I think that at the heart of apocalyptic literature, there's encouragement and hope. Always something that looks like devastation and defeat also carries the promise that God's justice and peace will be installed in the world. Out of chaos and confusion will come a new presence of God. The triumph of hope will mean radical change, the kind of change that might be described as heaven and earth passing away. Jesus warns us in the third section of this reading to stay awake in case the Master finds us asleep when he comes. This warning makes me think of that tattoo the Archbishop of Canterbury had on his bottom in the Johnny English movie, and it said, "Jesus is coming, look busy." I think the warning is not to stay awake to the possibility of a distant, remote and unpredictable coming again of God, or a warning to stay alert just in case. It's pointing to the certain reality of God's constant arrival in our lives and in the world, minute by minute, hour by hour, over and over again. The reading sends us back into a remembering of past comings, but also the present coming of God amongst us, and then on into the future. It brings it all together and reminds us of the whole story we share in. We're being called to recognise God's presence with and in us now, to see that God is with us, and to see this in spite of our jadedness, our cynicism, our misplaced belief that we are living our lives out of our own strength, and our very real pain and despair. Strange things happen with time in this reading. There's a way in which time frames flex, a kind of Doctor Who wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey kind of effect. Or maybe something like Salvador Dali's melting, dripping clocks. It's as though the lectionary is jumping right to the end of the Christian story, and yet also coming back to its beginning. We look out, zoom out maybe, to the end of time and Christ's return, but also zoom in on God's presence with us now, his faithfulness to us now, as well as in the fullness of time. And we zoom out again, but not so far, to the culmination of the Advent season in Christmas and the arrival of Jesus. We think of Advent as being about a beginning, yet this reading starts at the end. Christ has already arrived and is among us, and so we need to be attentive to that, watching to the signs of Christ's presence with us. This is the underlying paradox of the already, not yet quality to the divine drama we live in. Already, Jesus has established the means through which we are drawn into relationship with God, but not yet do we live in complete relationship. Already, the realm of God is in evidence in all of us, in everything around us, but not yet is that realm fully established. We live in a kind of meantime between already and not yet. By keeping alert, living our lives in the fullness of God's love, we will be prepared to live in God's promised realm when it comes, but also to experience now some of what life in that realm may be like. The metaphor of the fig tree underscores the watchful posture we should adopt, searching for the smallest signs, like the tenderness of the fig tree's branches and the emergence of leaves that signal summer is near. If our attention wanders, we'll miss the signs. We'll miss the hopeful signs that at the end of summer there will be fruit. We won't see that God is with us, drawing us in, holding us, loving us now. So how do we maintain this state of steady alertness? Jesus' final story in this reading may shine some light on how we can manage to remain alert all the time. In the final mini parable, Jesus gives the example of servants working together to take care of someone's household. Everyone has their job. The doorkeeper watches the door. The reason the household can be ready for the master's return is because everyone is working together with their own jobs and community, and together they can stay alert. So maybe staying alert, staying in hope, is about community. We can remain alert when we are in community. In Advent, we prepare in community for Christmas. We watch together for signs of God's fullness emerging in each other, in our community and in our world. And we discern together who we are as a community. We might not recognise God's presence and coming individually, but when we live in community, we can figure that out together. Advent calls us to see the hope, to know that although we are waiting for God's fullness to be revealed, that fullness is already breaking in. It's in us and among us already. It calls us to know that heaven and earth will pass away, but God's words, God's love for us, will not. Amen.